Hi, my name is Ryan. I'm the owner of Classic Shoe and Leather Service in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm a third-generation cobbler with over 30 years experience. Our facility repairs all leather items. Come on in. Let's see what we're repairing today. So today we have an interesting little project. It's kind of going to be kind of fun. What we're doing with this particular couch is we've restuffed all the cushions. We're going to go through a cleaning process, but the interesting part about this particular couch is how we have to actually stitch it together. Okay, so the manufacturer of this couch did it in a unique way, not one that's done very often, certainly not done very often anymore. They made the entire couch as a slip cover, essentially, stuffed the cushions, made the whole form, all the seams and all this, and then put it over a form and put the sides onto it. Now, I didn't really want to disassemble the entire couch in order to recreate what the customer needed. The customer wanted all the cushions restuffed, and he wanted them a lot firmer than what they were originally. So instead of doing what the manufacturer did, or to fix it like the manufacturer had done originally, which would be disassembling the entire couch all the way down to the frame, taking off the slip cover, repacking all the cushions, and then putting it back on, we decided to just simply split the seam and do it from kind of an external-internal way. Now let me explain what that means. If you'll look right here, you see that the cushion is completely sewn to the couch like this. Okay, see, so that's the way it is. That's top, bottom, side, and all this. So this whole piece is attached to this. That's what I mean by a slip cover going over the frame. So having that happen, we didn't want to take it all apart, so we did this. This is a completed piece. You come right down here. So what we did is we took the whole cover out, which you can see up here is completely loose, and the cushion is exposed on the inside. And this is completely finished. All the seams are put back together. Now what I'm going to show you today is how to create a seam that is kind of hidden, in all honesty. Oh, actually, it's not that one. It's this one that's completed. So you can see all the seams are back there, and all your top seam is right here. Okay, so we're going to go through the process. We're going to start you off. There's two different stitches that you have to do with this. We're going to start you off with teaching you how to start the first stitch, how to go through the body of the stitch, and then how to close that stitch. Then we're also going to teach you the secondary stitch, how to start it, how to go through it, and then how to close it at the end. All right, let's get started. All right, so we're going to start off with how much thread you need to use for a project like this. This is going to be a zigzag stitch. Essentially what we're going to start with is we're going to go in through the bottom side, come up, loop back around, go back in here and tie your starting knot, then come back through and start the actual stitch, which is going to be a zigzag pattern going back and forth between these two. And what it's going to do is it's going to close up this edge like this. I'm going to pull it all the way closed like that in this pattern right here, and then we'll be able to do our top stitch, which is technically a cosmetic stitch. Okay, so that's going to be what we're doing today for this one. You can see that the cushion is very stuffed. It's kind of overstuffed. That's what the customer wanted, is a very, very nice firm cushion. So we overstuffed it really well, which means that as I'm doing it, I'll have to push down with this as I'm running the needle through. It's a little bit complicated. This is definitely a job for more advanced students. Okay. All right, so starting off, typically with a job like this, I like to do about 4 times the amount of thread that you actually need. So it's really simple. You just go along the cushion, 2, 3, and 4. Done. Now we are going to use a double over thread, which means we're going to string it all the way through, come back and tie a knot where the two pieces meet. Just bring your thread through like that. Did I actually make it? No. Helps if you look at it and not try to show off by looking at the camera. All right, come on, Ryan. Wow, this is a waste of film. There we go. All right, so come back through, pull, 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 until you get to the end, like that. Right through, even up to 2 pieces, and tie a little knot. Now, once again, I like to cauterize my stitches after I tie my knot, not only because does it make a nice clean look, but it also prevents the knot from coming loose. So really quick, just like that, melt the 2 pieces together. Even if that knot does come loose, that one won't. So you have secondary. All right, starting off, what we want to do is we'll come in here and get real low on the stitch. I'm going to come in actually on the second stitch here. Just find that hole. All right, like that. Push through. Come back through on the same one right here. Now, getting started is usually the hardest part. Actually, in all honesty, on this one, getting started and closing is the harder part. The actual job itself is the body of the stitch is really not that difficult, just time consuming. All right, so we come back through on the next set of holes right there, and then we come back down. Now here is the important part. Got to make sure you do this. When you come back through this way, run your needle through your other thread, pull. Make sure, see, closes it all up real good. That means you got a real good knot in there. It's real tight and your seam won't come loose. Okay, and then it's quite standard from that point. We come back on our stitch right here and we repeat the process. It'll get a little less difficult as we move down the stitch past this corner right here. Ow. That's what I try not to do. I don't like stabbing myself, but unfortunately I'm really good at it. Okay, now this is the part where you can see wrapping the thread around your finger right here and pulling it is what is necessary to pull that seam in. Now, the problem with this particular part of the job is that will end up wrecking your finger. So I make a little finger caught for it. Really simple, just wrap a leather. Goes around there. It's like a second skin. Very, very nice. Keeps you from tearing up your hand so much when you're doing hand stitching like this. And it's pretty flexible, it's pretty movable. It's just a piece of pigskin. So pigskin being one of the more durable materials that there are as far as leather goes. And for being such a thin, pliable leather, just wonderful to work with. Okay, so you can see this is pretty simple. You can go back and forth, just like that. Okay, now when you get to here, you can see how you've got about 4 or 5 stitches right there. You want to make sure that you wrap around and you pull, okay? And you'll watch, it'll come back loose. That's okay, but you can see the only first 2, 3, they come back loose. As long as you keep pulling that about every 5th or 6th stitch, it'll keep us a nice tight line all the way down. Okay, come back here. Coming close to that stitched edge so the leather is a little thicker right there, which means that definitely a little harder to stitch. So when you get to a seam like this, I'm going to take and go down and out like that through the bottom of the stitch. And then you want to come back up because you don't want to try and cross over. You won't be able to cross over very well. And even if you do, you're going to cause a knot on the inside that's going to make your seam not work right. So pull it nice like that. And come back. Once again, find the existing hole. Push it through. Come back through the other side. Come on, where is it? There it is. All right, so that's essentially how you get it started. Once again, I'm going to push this edge over a little bit with my finger as we're pulling, and pull that thread nice and taut in the corner there. Very good. Nice tight corner on the seam. Okay, now I'll turn this off and I'm going to do a little bit of the seam to get it down here, and then we'll show you a little bit of the body seam just to show you how that goes, and then we'll show you how to close this stitch. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I wanted to show you the intermediate stitch, just kind of what's going on through the body of the cushion. Right now we're going to go to this top stitch here. I'm going to come over just like we were before and pull it back out just like this. Needle out. Now once we get to this side, once again, because the cushion is so full, I'm going to push down really well. We're going to push this over. I'm going to make sure that we pull this nice and tight. And see that just a little bit loose right there. And that's how tight that seam actually is. That's how tight you have to pull it. Now it'll come loose a little bit, just like before. Now you can see that I'm kind of holding it right here. I don't want it to actually come loose very much because I want to try to keep that as tight as possible. It just becomes more and more work the further on you go. So pull that right there, come back through, pull, and then you hold it over here like this. Come through, so you're doing two different things with your hands at the same time when you're doing this stitch. You can see that I'm holding the thread here to keep tension on this with my pinky while I'm coming back through and setting the needle and coming back through the hole on this side and pulling it all the way through. Now, when I get to this stage, pull it through like this, come back and hold the thread again like that. Come back under while still holding the thread. Pinch material like that and come back through. Okay, so that's what you're doing through the body of the stitch. Pull through once again, see it's being held, come back through, hold it here just like that and start over. Okay, so we'll show you how to close the stitch in just a minute. All right, I want to show you this part. You can see that the stitch broke as we were pulling on it. So we have to tie the stitch back together along the existing stitch. You definitely don't want to start all the way back from the beginning, but you can obviously not tie it off on this little bit. So we have to back up the stitch. We have to come back, undo the work that we've done, just like that. You can hear the disgust in how I am pulling the stitches apart. So, all right, now we've got a little bit enough to tie off with. We're going to come through the inside here. I'm going to pull the stitch to the inside. Pull the stuffing away. Pull the stitch down if I can grab it. Come on, let go. There it goes. Slowly pulling in. Okay. Now I have our old stitch right here. Now, tying this off and getting it to pull in properly is kind of tricky. You can see how the stitches want to pull back out. So you want to make sure that you don't lose tension. All right, I have a new string right here. When you break string, particularly on a job like this, I find that's best just to start completely fresh with the new string, restring your needle and everything. Don't use the old stuff because usually it's getting worn. That's the reason that it broke. All right, so we want to do just a simple loop stitch around your finger, like that. Come here, tie that off. To me, this is always a bit of a tricky situation. Let's do it the other way. strings through there. Grab them. Grab all of them at once. Start to pull, but make sure that you put your needle in the loop there of your awl. Try as hard as you can to get it to go as close to there as possible. And that is one of the toughest tricks. Alright, so now that we got that, we're going to come back through and we want to stitch a block into our stitch to lock it off. So we're going to come back up through this stitch and we're going to go, hopefully, able to go back far enough to get it to close off. So we want to go back, looks to be about right here. Come back to right there, and then you're going to start your stitch over behind where you were. Be very careful. So you pull that now, nice and gentle, like that, and then you can come back and continue your zigzag. And what will happen is you'll have a little bit of the stitch right there showing, but there's other ways to deal with that while we're cleaning it to make that disappear and make that look good. But we want to close up this hole where we tied off the knot as much as possible so it doesn't show, and also so the knot doesn't back out. Okay, and now we're back to where we tied the knot off, right here. And hopefully that will close up nice and tight. And you can see you got a little bit of a loose thread right there, but we'll be able to take care of that in the cleaning process. Okay, and then we'll just continue the stitch like normal. That's how you tie the knot in the stitch like this. Okay, so we're going through the body of the couch, pulling the stitches through. It's always good to have a pair of needle nose there for when your fingers get tired. Now you want to keep it fairly taut as you're going through, but you don't really want to pull it tight every single stitch because it's just not necessary and it's kind of counterproductive. You want to go through and just loosely go back and forth in the zigzag pattern like we've talked about before. Putting this together, going back and forth like this, making sure that all of your stitches on the bottom side stay on the bottom side. You can't loop around. You can't loop around the seam itself. It has to go back and forth. Alright, so as you can see, there we go, a little bit further. Pull that. Now, once you get to where you can see this looseness going back about 5 or 6 threads, that's when you want to take it and just pull it nice and tight. Always pull in the direction of the way that you're stitching, not left, right, up or down or anything like that. If you're stitching, you know, in the forward position going like this, then that's the way you want to pull the stitch when you're pulling it tight. That does a lot of different things. You want to make sure that you do it that way so that you don't break the stitch, you don't bend the needle, you don't tear the material that you're trying to stitch together, as well as many other different things. So we're going to go through here. It looks like we got about another 20 or 25 stitches to go. Whoops. And the camera's a little bit close. About 20-25 stitches to go there, and then we'll show you how to close this one up. Now we're going to close it up on the outside, of course, but we're going to show you how to make that look really, really neat and clean so that nobody really notices that you closed it up right there, which is important. And make it look pretty. And on this one, that's not going to be too difficult since that corner, since that edge is tucked away down in that corner real deep. Luckily on cushions like this, that's pretty common that you can hide the stitch right in the corner because the corner is hidden in a seam or a fold or something like that that people never really look at. All right, pull that nice and tight. So I got a nice tight seam there. Getting real close to the corner here, so the pliers are getting a little more necessary. Okay. Back up just a little more. All right, so at this point you can see that getting pretty crowded in there. Ooh, sorry. They're flying at you. So I want to pull this back, but oddly enough, now that it's in a little corner, it tends to go just a little bit faster. Tuck that away. Once again, out and in, just like a, what do they call them, a hidden stitch on a blouse seam, or something like that. You do this in fabric, but a lot of times in fabric it's more on a two-dimensional surface. You can lay the fabric out flat and be able to do this kind of stitch, just whip it through. This is a little bit different just because we're working with a much thicker material, much less pliable, and in my opinion, much more forgiving. I love working with leather, but I am a bit biased. Trying very hard not to stab my cameraman. Or myself, which is always nice. I don't really like stabbing myself. Unfortunately, I'm really not very good at it because I tend to do so a lot. Alright, so this one, because it's so thick and it's right on that edge, if I haven't shown you this yet, so I can't remember, make sure that you do it like that. You want to go around all the way on that one, because otherwise it will just get all jumbled up. And it's almost impossible to pull it through by pinching it like this, like we normally do. Alright, so we're getting down deep into the corner here, as you can see. So we want to finish this stitch up. We're going to come back and close it. I'm going to show you, and it looks like about 5 or 6 stitches. I'm going to do these loose right here so I can get through them. That down. How close are we? We are very close. There we go. Now, I know we've talked about making sure that when you're stitching things like this back up, that you get it right back in the same holes as what was original. Now, as you remember, this is a very long seam, and coming down to the end, as you can see, I am 1 hole long. over the whole thing. And it's not bad. It's not bad. Out of that whole cushion. Ended up just one hole long. Alright, so we're going to tie this tight. Pull this nice and tight, wrap it around. Remember, don't do that to your actual skin because it will hurt. Alright. That seems nice and tucked in there. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to do just a little loop stitch around here inside the seam. So we got one hole right here, which was our last stitch from previous. And we're going backwards, which is a little bit harder. Okay, right here. And come in and come back out. Come on. That's a problem. Get in the hole, stay in the hole. Come on, you can do it. There we go. All right. All right, so that's one loop around. Now what we're going to do now is we're actually going to go back through the hole that we already created and over to here, and this one that I skipped, which actually works to my advantage. Okay, so we have that one there. I have this right here. Now what we do now is we cut, but we only pull one side. So make sure that one side stays, one side goes. Pull it down like this. Pull that one out a little bit. Stick our awl. And where our thread separates down here into two, we just run our awl straight up and it will separate our line for us. All right. Then it's just a simple matter of pull through, tie off. That was the awl falling to the ground, nice and noisily. Okay, now this does not do well for tying knots, just by the way. I'm going to do a triple just to make sure that's good. We're going to cut that, and once again we're going to cauterize it. We are not burning the stitch, just like always. We are melting the stitch. So we want your flame to the line, but not actually catch it on fire. Down like that, melts it back into a little bubble, goes in the corner. Nobody will ever see that. All right, so that's the end of the first stitch, a little bit of the body of it, end of the first stitch. The cushion's just a little bit lumpy right now, but we're gonna move it around, push on it as we clean it, and get it all nice and conditioned. All right, so we'll be coming back here in just a second, and we'll be starting the secondary stitch, which is this line right here. It follows all along. We're gonna start it over here, run the same way over back to this way. All right, see you in just a minute. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and start the top stitch, which is the secondary stitch. It's mostly cosmetic, particularly on the top of the cushions, but you want to try to catch that folded over layer, like when we were doing this stitch and I was showing you how you want to push the pieces to this side. It's so that you can connect them with the holes going down here. Now in the corner right here, it's going to be really, really tough to get them because there's not anything to push against, but we'll be able to get them down here into the body of the bag, which is where it's really necessary for the structure of the cushion. All right, so we're going to put that right there. Once again, you want to use enough thread. You do not want to run out of thread on this particular stitch, because getting the knot to set as you're looping around and not look bad is very, very difficult in all honesty, because it does end up showing. We want it to show as little as possible. Little places like this are where the thread and the leather are actually kind of stretching and molding a little bit, same as this, and this is a really thick spot. So over time, as this leather softens up and as the cushions kind of mold into the material a little better, those will close up and look much better. But if you get a knot in here somewhere, that knot is going to actually show really, really bad for a long time. All right, so we want to make sure that we have enough thread. So on this one, I typically go a lot further, not only because we want to make sure that we're doing that, but also we're using 4 layers of thread, not 2. Okay, so instead of just doubling it over, we're actually quadrupling. That's mainly because this is a very, very tough stitch and it likes to rip and tear a lot. So once again, you don't want to have to knot this and have to start all over or back the stitch out because you did do that. So make sure your thread's real strong for this particular stitch. Now, so really just misstitched that completely. There we go. Okay. Bring those 2 up together. Now it's a little more complicated when you have 2 threads going through the same eye hole than just one. So just take your time. It takes a little bit of practice, but you can do it, and that's a pretty big eye hole, so hey, no big deal. All right, let's see. I'm starting to get a little nest there. Straighten that out. All right, so just as before, I want to fold this over all the way to where it's in half. By the way, in case anybody didn't know, that is an old show from my childhood that I found out lied to me. Anybody that knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's one of those things. Anyway, moving on to happier times. That was a happy time. I like those stories. But it was a total lie. All right, now that we got that in there, we actually don't tie it off right now. See how the end's going to be loose? We're going to leave it like that until we get our first couple of stitches in there, and I'll show you why in just a moment. Okay, once again, I'm going to take my finger piece here, put it on, and go back a full stitch. I'm going to come in, like I said, that first corner is going to be just about impossible to get the first one in the through the backing, but we'll be able to get it here in a couple, and right on the corners. It's not really structural. It's pretty thick on these corners anyway. All right, there we go. So we're going to go through there, all 4 threads, nice and even. Just about to the end, we're going to leave ourselves a little bit of room because we're still going to pull it once more. All right, now we're going to come back through here, and there's one hole right in the middle there. So that's the one we're going through now. We're going to come back up, find our center hole. Okay. Very important when stitching these to make sure that you get all of your stitches right back in the original holes. If you don't get it back in the original holes, it shows and it looks really bad, and we don't want that. Okay, so now we're going to do something just a little weird. We're going to come back through here once again, all the way back. And we're going to come back through our starting point. Oops, just a little bit high. All right, through our starting point here. Good idea to hold your threads apart, particularly when you have 4 threads like this, because they like to knot up on each other. And if you don't separate them like that, it happens very, very quickly. All right, so now we're going to set our needle down here, and we're going to tie this. It's very simple, nice little simple knot. And after all is said and done, we'll cauterize it. But right now, I'm just going to tie it nice and tight. Okay, now that that's done, that off, and lighter here. Be sure not to burn these stitches. We want to melt the stitches anyway, we don't want to burn them. Cauterize, there we go, so the knot never comes loose. Good, solid, quality job. All right, now, once again, we're coming back through that same hole, but we're going the long way this time. So we're going to come out right there. And now we have a starting point for our stitch that, as far as the seam goes, isn't noticeable. Okay, so now to do the stitch, this is actually a pretty simple stitch from this point forward. We're going to go in, we're going to grab the material that's behind it. We're going to go one stitch down, there it is. Come on, fold back over. There we go. This is one of those situations, since we are doing it blind, if you can't find the hole, make one. All right, we're going to come down right here. Oh, I did that. Yeah. First one's got to be short. Come back around to your first one. Like this. In, down, and across. There. So we're skipping that hole right there. That's going to go back. This one's going to come out, and we're going to keep doing that. So it's every other hole from this point and back. It's nice to keep your tools out of your way, so let's see, covers up that little hole right there so that doesn't become noticeable. Try not to get too far off from the original holes. You always want to get as close as you possibly can. Sometimes it's just not possible to get it dead on, but you want to get it as close as you possibly can. And the other reason is you don't want to continue, trying to correct yourself and just pop in new holes over and over and over again in a new place, making it look really obvious. All right. So that's the basic stitch right there. It's just a little loop, as you can see. Start back from one hole right behind which you just came out of. Like that. Get your back piece and come across. Don't stab yourself. This is important, okay? I can't stress this one enough. If you stab yourself, it hurts, which discourages you from wanting to do a job like this, okay? So my best advice is don't stab yourself while doing this job. Okay, and that's a good start to the stitch. Beautiful. All right, so as I told you before, you don't want to run out of stitching when doing this particular stitch, but if by chance you break a stitch or run out of stitching, this is how you have to start it again. But before that, just to show you, when you do hand stitching all day like that, you get calluses in really weird places. All right, anyway. So we're going to tie off a knot, pretty much like we did before, but this time we're going to show you how to hide the knot from the top side to the bottom side. So give that a little twist. We want to do it as close to the bottom as we can, but it is going to end up a little bit high because we want to be able to stuff it in. All right, let me do that again. Okay, so we want the knot to end up fairly close, but not right on the other place, because we want to be able to stuff it into that hole right there. So, a little loose strings here, so I can tighten that up a little bit better. Nice and tight. Not pulling on the right one. No, there we go. Okay. And then, of course, we're going to cut that and cauterize it, because that's the proper way to make sure that your knots don't come loose. We'll cut, we'll cauterize. Push those together so that seals. All right, and then what we're going to do is we're actually going to stretch out this hole just a little bit, and we want to go towards the other stitches, because you don't want to put additional stress on the stitches. Now, as I've told you before, leather has an elasticity to it. So as I stretch this hole out, after I get everything through, let me find that center piece, come back through here. Once I pull it through, that knot should disappear, and then the hole itself will slowly close up afterwards. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to pull and push at the same time, just like that. That goes back in there, the hole closes up nicely, and we begin again. Okay, so that's how we do a knot on that particular stitch. Tie it off so that it doesn't show. We're going to go right back in here through that secondary piece in there. Once again. Really? Okay. Once again, like that. Turn up your needle. Back out the other hole, just like that. And continue. Can't tell that there's a knot in there. It's very important to be able to hide your knots in stitches like this, otherwise it looks pretty bad. All right, thank you. All right, so we're going to close the top stitch here. You can see that we're coming into the corner right over here from here. So just as we were doing before, we're going to continue coming back through the loop, catching the inside material, coming over. Always stiff going through that backside material, and then oops, lost it. All right, coming back through over here, through that material into the hole, just as before, like that. All right, so same as before, just continuing the loop all around. Still important to catch that bottom material so that the cushion is completely supported all the way through. Okay, land right there. Oops. All right, now you see that we're coming up on the last hole right here and then the finishing hole. So we're going to do this just like we did on the first stitch. We're going to end up tying a knot. Now the difference is because we have 4 threads in here instead of just 2 coming up to our end, because that's how we started, then that means, oops, just a little high there. That means that it's just a little more difficult to stitch because you have to make sure you're tying the right 4 threads, or the right 2 threads together. All right, so once again, you want to make sure that your needle is very even. My hands will work. They're a little tired right now after doing this. All right, coming through. And one last one to get us to our finishing hole. Right in there, through that. good. Okay, so I don't have my scissors with me, so I'm going old school. I just forgot them when I sat down, and I don't want to get back up because, as I've said before, I'm lazy. All right, the needle down right there. Now, just like before, what we're going to do, we have our 4 threads right here. We're going to pick 2 threads, just these 2 right here. I'm going to pull these 2 threads. Oops. Oh, wait, I missed a stitch. Oops. I may have messed this up for a second. I can fix it in a second. Make sure that I've got it right. Yep, I did. Hang on just a second. I'm going to rethread that. Let me see my needle. I was a little bit premature there. I know everybody's surprised by that. So, go here. Rethread our needle, which is going to be lots of fun since it's 4 individual threads now. Come on. Through there. I missed one. Huh, there's another. I got 3. Come on, 4th one that fell out. Through the hole. There we go. All right, so since I screwed that up, I gotta go through one more time. So we're gonna pull this one through like that, since I did that wrong, and then we're gonna come back. Let's make this just a little bit longer to make sure I don't lose that. So we'll come back through our last hole here, and then into our finishing hole right here. Once again, do that just a little early. Okay, now get all the way through there, pull this, and we do want to go ahead and make sure that we pull this one all the way through, but not the back hole. Okay, so now on your back loop, I want to pick 2 threads. 1, 2, separate them. Pull 1 set of threads like that. Make sure they're not tied up against the other threads, like so. Pull that. And once again, just like before, we're going to simply tie a knot. Take that off because that doesn't need to be there. Not good for tying knots. All right, that one, very, very simple knot. Like that, and then I'm going to cauterize it in just a second once I get my scissors and lighter, since I forgot my tools. Hang on one moment. Alright, and then once again, we're just going to cut this fairly close. Right there. Pull the cushion back, and we're going to melt the threads, not set them on fire. Beautiful. So that's the finished stitch all the way across. Looks pretty. You can see the zigzag pattern right there coming out, and the finishing stitch connected all on the back side to the bottom of the other stitch. Okay, so it turns out really nice, and this will finish out more and more. This will push in and cushion in and fill out and be more even as time goes on, as it gets used. All right, so that's all for the stitching. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you. Okay, so we have completed the stitching on the job. This is the couch that we stuffed the cushions on to put it all back together nice and stiff. As we can see, the cushion is very stiff. We got a nice good foam in there, plus a good layer of cotton. Real good. good stiffness all over. So you can see the seams came out really nice all the way around. Everything went back together. Not too bad, not too bad. Alright. That's the body of the couch itself. Come back around here to the top side. So it's doing pretty good. Like I said, we got some gaps in here, a little one right there. We got some over here in the top seam right up there. But that's okay, because like I said, as it gets worn, as it gets used a little bit, all of those seams are going to compress and bend and mold and shape themselves to make it look beautiful. This is going to be an absolutely gorgeous little couch when we're all done with it.